Welcome to Humanizing Leadership. I'm your host, Louise H. Reed. It has been a minute since I've shared a podcast episode with you. There have been lots of exciting, awesome things going on in my world, but more to come on that in a future episode. Today, I'd like to share with you another brilliant conversation that I had with an expert guest, where we, as always, discuss topics for next-gen leaders. On this particular episode today, I'm joined by Dr. Kellie Lease Stecher. She's co-founder and president of Patient Care Heroes, governor of the 7th District for the American Medical Women's Association. She's an author and physician and healthcare policy change advocate. She has also just launched a book called Delivering, which is an appropriate title considering she's an OBGYN. And this book, wow. It's raw, revealing, and authentic. It is a collection of stories that no doubt will leave every woman, as it did me, moved and motivated to take both personal and collective action. That's what I really like. One of the many things I really liked. I wanted to take change for me personally, and I wanted to influence broader change in the world. That's really cool. So while Kellie fights for culture change and equity in medicine, I'm inspired and re-energized to do the same in my profession. So I'm very excited to share this conversation with you. While this conversation with Kellie, Dr. Kellie, did occur earlier in the year before her book was published, I encourage you to listen in. I encourage you to connect with her on LinkedIn. And I highly recommend that you pick up a copy of her raw and revealing book on Amazon.com. So my friends, listen in and enjoy the show. Kellie, my new friend who is never going anywhere. You are now in my circle because you are that amazing. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad to be in your circle. We need like good, awesome, amazing women in the world that we can all hang out with and post-COVID, visit each other and maybe go to a vacation on a beach somewhere.
That sounds marvelous. I took a big sigh, which I'm sure listeners heard, this breathy noise through their podcast earbuds or whatever. Because yes, I find myself doing that a lot. These deep breaths that we need to kind of continue to take to propel us through the waters that we're in right now. I want to jump right on into this and ask you a little bit about the name of the show. So the name of the show is Protect Women Who Protect Us. And I know this work is of huge importance to you. So can you tell us what that means? What does Protect Women Who Protect Us mean, and why is it important?
It's so big, right? And so sometimes when I look at these projects as a huge entity, it can be overwhelming, right? And I think that a lot of us feel that way when we are one person in a community, in the US, in a state, in a country, right? And so I think that when I'm looking at these things, I typically try to digest one initiative at a time. However, when I, went through med school and residency, I realized some of the things that I personally went through, what my colleagues went through, especially women of color went through, and realized that no one is really out there being our advocate. And when I was in my educational realm, and, I think every single person in the medical field realizes it's not easy, right? Residency is terrible. They kind of beat you down. However, I do appreciate that in the long run because I can be up for 40 hours and still be a fully functioning physician, right? So I think it does prepare you. However, I wanted to be treated equally badly to my male counterparts, if that makes sense. So I wanted no preferential treatment. I wanted no, horrible treatment. I wanted all of us to be equal playing fields. And what I found is that is that's not the case. And, I probably only had one preferential treatment because I was a woman, but I had thousands of negative treatment because I was a woman. And that is basically the story that you will hear from every physician in training. And I've talked to people nationally, I've talked to different organizations of women now, and we need to kind of come together to make sure that we are making sure our medical students and our residents and our physician colleagues in practice are all treated respectfully with dignity and can do their jobs. Because really what it amounts to is if we're not protecting them, they can't protect the community. Because patient safety can be affected and everything else. So it's a huge issue. that I think we all should get behind, right? And, talking with AMWA, the American Medical Women's Association, and the League of Minority Voters, and we're really developing a coalition where we're going to have this amazing group of people that can propel these values forward. And I'm hoping now is the time we can get organized.
And why now? Why, considering that this has been an issue for so long? I'm glad you're doing it. Let's be clear that I'm glad that the time is now. But I've heard you talk a little bit just now, and in some articles that I've read of yours on various social media platforms, that there's a momentum and the time feels right. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So when I was in medical school, just seeing kind of how things were spinning around me, you basically become voiceless, right? You are low man on the totem pole. You keep your head down, you do your job, you get through school, because what happens? If you ruffle the feathers and you don't graduate, I don't know how in the world you would pay your loans back. I still have loans, right? So this is not like now I'm, middle-aged and my loans are paid off. It's still there. And if I didn't graduate and become a practicing clinician, I have no idea how I would be able to afford that. And in residency, I did try to speak up with one particular instance, and I was told I should have more of a pleasant tone by this individual who was a GYN oncologist, who often made comments about my body and different things in front of patients. And for me, it was like, okay, shrug it off, blaze forward, finish the training. I had made a comment to our residency director who did not take it seriously. The mode on the street was, okay, this person picks one person to kind of pick on in each residency class every year. And so that was just the MO. It was fine. However, it's not right. No one should have to go through that. No one should be talked down to, minimized, harassed, their body disparaged in front of patients in patient care rooms. None of this should even exist. And then to have me told I should smile more and have more of a pleasant tone, and that I should wear more makeup because I look worse than the cancer patients. These are things that you should not have to deal with when you are working very hard to be trained. And as I got through the system and became a practicing physician, I realize it doesn't stop, right? This is something that you can't just say, oh, when I'm done with my academic training, I'm going to be treated as an equal. Because if you look at the studies, and I can give you many of them, this is not a thing that exists. There's only 16 to 18% of CEOs in healthcare systems are women. We don't have women on boards. We don't have women in chairman or chairwomanships, right? So the chairs of the departments, even in women-dominated specialties, are still men. And I think we really need to gather together in order to fight this, in order to have a voice in this discussion. And when I look at the world around us and what I want for my kids and what I want my daughter to see, especially because now she's saying at 6 years old she wants to be a doctor, I really want us to fix this system. And I think in a lot of ways, we're going to have to burn this to ash to rise, right? We're going to have to essentially be the phoenix here, and we're going to have to take care of this together. And when I see other women also starting to speak out and be advocates, that also really heartens me and really propels me forward. Like I did a podcast on Kevin MD about medical harassment, and I had a mom of an individual help stalk me for her because she was going through a lot of stuff in her residency program. And we connected, and now we're going to do great things on this. And now we're building a coalition nationally of women of different specialties, and we're going to take some of these things on. However, I've realized it's not enough for us women in medicine to take a stance. We have to get all of our partners in the private sector to join forces with us, because unfortunately money talks.
Yeah. And I think that you've said so many interesting things in that answer. One of the things that stands out to me is that it's not a female issue. It's a human issue.
Mm-hmm.
right? We are humans, you are human doctors caring for human patients. And for us to have a healthcare system that we're proud of, that's doing right by those that are utilizing the system, it's a problem that needs to be addressed by all humans in the system, right? So that's
Exactly.
not a female issue for female doctors to fix. So
Exactly.
when you were talking about, we need to gather together, who's the we? Who's the we need to gather together? Tell me more about that.
So that's multi-layered, as you know. Um, so there's, the royal we. No, I'm just kidding. So obviously, I would like women to get strength from each other, right? I think that in some industries, it's been very challenging for women to support each other. And I get that because only, the select few are able to rise up and get leadership positions, right? And I don't think we realized how much power we have or had if we just, stick together. And so in general, I would like to see women not look the other way, right? And and obviously men, if they, are good men, and I know many, many, many good men now, and have actually met a multitude of amazing men through some of this work, who are definitely in there with us in the trenches. But if we can kind of gather together and, okay, that is not appropriate. Like, I'm watching the situation unfold before me. This is not an appropriate situation. You should not be bullied and intimidated in the workplace. And I've witnessed that. I shouldn't just shrink away and say nothing, right? Like, I should be helping to support that individual, because this is not a healthy environment if someone can be screaming at me because I'm going to the operating room before them for an emergency and they are upset because they're missing a golf game. So women need to get behind other women. That's kind of like the number one thing. We, meaning this is a human issue, right? I mean, yes, the medical community should rally around this. There should be no one in the medical community who thinks, oh, we're fine. We can totally continue on our merry way with gender equity issues and healthcare disparities. Like, that's fine. That's totally fine. No one should think that this is fine. Even when I think I'm doing a good job, I know that there's 600 ways that I should be working on myself to improve what I'm doing. Right. And I think that, us as a healthcare system, us as an industry, right? Because unfortunately, healthcare is a business. We need to look at and kind of dig down to what really matters, right? And I think that includes insurance companies, right? Because everyone plays a role with complicity, complacency, supporting healthcare systems who are trying to do the right things for people and patients and their employees. I think that should be incentivized. I don't think we should all just stand behind places that can't stand behind their entire workforce. And so that's a huge issue. And then building the coalition of, PACs and different medical organizations is really important, because physicians have lost their voice, right? And so if you look at how our system is run, physicians are often much the afterthought. I think that COVID really brought that out in people. We realized how far down the ladder we are, right? CDC was putting out false information, and we couldn't even get our professional organizations like American College of OBGYN to put out a statement going, oh no, that's crazy. Don't wear bandanas, wear actual face masks. I mean, so the people on the ground are, probably thousands of rungs down the ladder, and we didn't realize how minimized we became in our own system when we are the ones providing patient care. And really, physicians have lost that voice. Nurses, thankfully for them, have nurses unions, right? And so they actually have people out there advocating for them. They actually have powerful organizations with money, which sadly, as we've talked about, money talks. And so I think trying to rally the physician community around important issues like mental health, safety, gender equity, I think everyone should be on board with that.
I love that. How do we need to see our leaders, or what's great leadership look like then in this context? And what do we need to be building from a leadership perspective so that we can create and nurture and maintain and keep alive this kind of, future that you're wanting, that you talk of?
Yeah, I think we need to empower, well, we need to empower women in general in the healthcare community, because we have fit in the mold, right? Like we try to fit in the box and we try to not ruffle feathers because we see what happens, right? We're retaliated against, we're made fun of, we're harassed, we're put down, our perspectives are not valued. And so I think we essentially have like a verbally abusive boyfriend, right? And so what has happened is we then are quiet. We shrink away, we don't share our information, we don't tell our stories. And so we need to have leadership that not only values our stories but encourages the stories coming forward, and doesn't just do the lip service thing, doesn't just listen to the stories, but actually takes those and puts them into action. Because that's something that I've watched since George Floyd's murder in many locations across this country. And the lip service is actually almost more damaging because it gives this false sense of hope and continues to instill this trust mismatch. And when that happens, it almost damages the relationships further. So leaders need to actually lead, which is an interesting concept. Listen, and then take action on the concerns that are happening. We also should have encouragement for all organizations to actually, here's a shock, make women part of the leadership teams, right?
Okay, I need to stop here for a second.
Yeah.
We have been talking about getting women women having a seat at the table for years.
Yep.
For years I'm almost wondering why we're still talking about this until I look at the data. And then the data tells me, okay, we still have so much work to do. This is why we're still talking about it. And unfortunately, as you've already alluded to, in healthcare as well as other industries, COVID has done a number on women in the workforce, and so even the progress we've made is now at risk. What can we as individuals start to do differently? Because I know that I can get really fired up on the issue and then so frustrated. I wonder, I'm just like this tiny drop in an ocean. Oh my God, there's so much to ask and so much to talk about that. Where do we go?
It's interesting. So I have been in a couple meetings that have really, I would say, like changed every fiber of my being, right? And one of those meetings, someone literally said to me, you could never hurt us. You could never make a change. You're one person. And I thought, I could never make a change. I'm one person. And initially that made me really angry. And then I thought, thank you. Because it really lit a match under me. And my one person then started an organization, then talks to people for 12 hours a day about these issues, and is having meetings with these legislators and organizations across the country. And it's not the one person then, right? I'm finding kind of my soul tribe here that all feels the same way I do. And I think the biggest thing is trying to figure out who's doing what you want to do and glomming on to their situation, right? And so patientcareheroes.com, you can come, you can find me, we can build an alliance, we can do all the things. But I think really whatever you want to do, whatever you want to change, it all starts with a team. And the bigger the team is, the more successful it's going to be. And it really just takes one match.
I think that's really, that is really inspiring, right? It really is inspiring because it can get overwhelming when we look at all of the stories on the news and consider the lack of progress, and then the revert, how we've kind of gone backwards in a lot of ways. So what does success look like?
I think success really looks like we are treated the same. We literally are treated the same in medicine and beyond. Because, in no world should a man have more credibility than you because he's a man. Should someone be able to minimize you, destroy your career because they're a man and you're a woman? In no world should that happen. In no world should someone be allowed to threaten you and you not be believed because you're a woman. And so none of those things should exist anymore, right? And so that's why I personally feel like getting the coalition and legislating things will help us hold people to account. Because if we have boards and medical boards and CEOs and employees and whatever else doing these things because they feel entitled to do these things, we're never going to make progress. And that's why we need to really, to solve these problems, we need to be able to hold people accountable. And we need to be able to have leaders in place that are going to objectively look at data. And we need to, really demolish the old boys club, the good old boys club, right? And in medicine, that has been a steadfast element that women have been up against forever. And I really think I would love to talk to my daughter about that as being a past tense thing and not a current day thing when she's old enough to be in medicine.
Yeah, and we see that too in the tech world. When we think about high tech and technology field in general, similar sorts of challenges on the surface. What contributes to them, but probably quite similar as well. And so I love the idea of us looking more broadly as well beyond the medical field and be able to align sort of your coalition and your work around patient heroes, and being an advocate for those in the healthcare system to be on, because I think a lot of the strategies and approaches would be relevant across the board.
Exactly. And I was talking to an MD, JD, who is very knowledgeable, an older woman who has been up and down working on these things. And after talking with her, I felt just like defeated, right? Because she's like, I support you. I agree. I've worked in this, and I don't know people are going to give up their individual power fiefdoms, right? And I just thought, oh my gosh. And then I thought, it's because we haven't done it right. It's because we haven't gotten Canada and the UK and Australia and all of our little players involved and done a UN campaign. It's because we haven't involved the private sector companies to put pressure on them. It's because we haven't involved the League of Women's Voters and the League of Minority Voters and disabled Americans. And we need to come together because this is a people issue. This is not a medical issue. This is a people, safety, health, public health crisis. And until we can look at this and really figure out how we want to manage this, we've done it wrong. And so I had that epiphany after that meeting, and I realized, you know what, we're just going to keep pushing and we're going to keep doing the grassroots thing, which I do all day long when I'm not practicing. And we're going to figure out how to do it. And I know that it's hard because most of us, especially those of us who operate like short-term projects, and I have to tell myself this is not a short-term project. This is a long-term, if not lifelong project.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm committed to, because every time I feel like my energy is down, someone calls me and tells me their story. And I know they rely on me to work on this.
Is that what fuels you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That and my kids, because I want my son to know how to respectfully treat people and to treat people with dignity and to look at women as equals. And I want my daughter to know she can do anything.
And it's interesting that, talking about the children aspect of things. I had someone on the show recently, Dr. Marissa Porges. She's right now she's a head of school for a private school, a girls' private school in the US. She wrote a book called What Girls Need, and she's talking about how we start to raise a generation of girls who become leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just as importantly, you commented on your son. I'm not sure boys are getting enough attention.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, I agree.
We're doing the same thing in the same way that we're creating these women's groups to do all these things, which I agree with. Women need women. Oh my goodness. Do we need them? Do we need them? But that alone, to your point a few moments ago, that hasn't worked. So what else do we need to do?
Right.
It's not dismantling the women's groups. It's using those in addition to some other methods to gain more momentum.
Exactly.
So, but we're doing this with our boys. We're creating these girls groups. We're making girls take the responsibility for advocacy. What do we need to be doing with our boys?
It's such a good question. Because people have reached out to me and been like, oh my gosh, you're a women's advocate. You're doing all these things. I mean, does that mean you don't want your son to succeed? Does that mean that like you prefer your daughter over your son? Does that mean that like he's, chopped liver? Absolutely not. Like I want him to do all the things, but I want him to know that women can also do all the things. Right. And so I think for me, having the hard conversations with him as a mother, is critical, because at 8 years old, they are way smarter than you think they are. And they're taking all of it in. And we've witnessed different, very misogynistic displays and different events and different things where a man was speaking to his wife, and I'll ask him, what he thought, what he took from that, whatever. And he's actually synthesized this information and been like, oh, that person is like a very religious Catholic person, Mom. I'm like, yeah. Well, I mean, if he was truly like this religious person, wouldn't he treat his wife with respect? And I thought, there you go. Perfect. Mm-hmm. Great. But my parents, I think, shied away from all the difficult conversations, and we just pushed it down and swept it under the rug. And I think that was a generational thing for sure. And so I think we need to do a good job educating both our girls and boys and making sure that we're not missing that conversation. And that's one of the reasons I wrote my book, Resuscitate This, which will be coming out at some point. And hopefully we'll have a screenplay and different things where we can address some of these issues along postpartum mental health and gender equity issues and abuse and assault. And because I really want this conversation to be something that's not this taboo, horrible thing. I want it to be something that we can use as conversation pieces, not only for us as women when we're talking with our friends, but also so we can teach our daughters and our sons about consent and about safety and about what they should be doing for themselves.
I love all of that. I just thought of the word, we need to normalize all those things that you said. We need to normalize the hardships of life as well and be able to go into those hard places and have those conversations. And you mentioned and alluded to the George Floyd and the situation that occurred there, which was one of many situations that have been occurring for years and continue to occur. And I have to say, I'm very grateful, and I don't say this very often, I'm very grateful for social media, in some of the good that it has done it's almost a tool that we can use in a positive way to support the dismantling of these systems that do not serve the broader community. So I don't say many good things about social media very often. But
yeah. I mean, it definitely, the whole misinformation, easily spread through social media, that is a hardship. Yes. Mm-hmm. But I think it has also really kind of alerted people to the fact that there's a lot of people who have the same values out there, and it's allowed people to really come together to try to work on these issues, which I think is fantastic.
So as we're getting close to the end of the show, you've alluded to it, you mentioned it a couple of times, that I really want to ask a direct question as to why should the average American care about protecting women who protect us? Tell us a little bit more about why they should be getting involved and how they can do that.
So aside from just, being a kind, good human, which, I would love to think that we would all just kind of jump on board just knowing that someone's suffering. If someone's suffering, I am there, right? And I think most physicians and most nurses and most medical community people would jump in if someone was suffering, right? And really, to me, what I picture, because this is a moment that I was in a situation where my career was threatened, but you're drowning and no one is there to help you up, right? And you think this is it, this is the end. No one's there, right? And I think someone needs to step up and grab that person's hand and pull them out of the water so that we can decrease physician suicide, so we can make sure our training programs are revealing to us the best possible physicians and nurses we can have. Because if you start at baseline as a burned out, depressed, graduating residency, going into clinical practice, you're going to be more at risk for substance abuse. You're going to be more at risk for suicide. You're not going to be as engaged in taking care of patients. And really, to me, you're not showing up as your authentic best self. You're just kind of beaten down, like trotting around life, hoping to, not get sued. And for me, really looking at this, and with my wonderful entourage of women, we need to make sure that we're showing up as ourselves and practicing the best medicine we can practice, which then leads to better patient safety, better patient outcomes, potentially even empowering us enough that we can take an active role in the health systems. And so if you really look at all the people who've tried to fix health systems and the healthcare system at large in this country, what did we change? Like, we changed some policies, right? If you even look at a bunch of amazing private sector individuals tried to put together an alternate system, and Jeff Bezos and all those people, right? What did we do? Did we go into these places? Did we change the leadership structures? Did we, advocate for people over money? Like, what did we do, right? And I think that if we can tear it down, we're going to build it back stronger.
I love that. I said we're coming to the end, and we really are, but I have a few more questions based on what you just said. So when you were drowning, which I know I've been drowning in my career numerous times, and I feel like I've been calling, screaming, yelling for a life preserver, and leaders have just gone missing, gone AWOL. What kind of leader, in one of the times where you felt like you were drowning, what kind of leader did you need?
I needed someone to lean in. Like, I needed someone to just be there and to see me as a human being and to actually care and be vested in me as a person.
And what do you think stops people from doing that? Because leaders will have seen you. Leaders saw you.
They're uncomfortable. I mean, even, in day-to-day practice, like if I have a nurse who's upset about a situation, she talks to a leader about a situation, the leader just keeps on walking by, right? Like, no, you need to stop. You need to lean in. You need to say, what can we do? What was the situation? Can I help you fill out these forms? Can we work on this together? Instead of basically saying, I heard you, kind of, I'm walking by and I'm not even going to address this issue. Because that to her meant, I don't care. Mm-hmm. You're a cog in a wheel. I don't care that you just put, all this effort into the situation. I don't care that you're upset that the patient's upset. I'm just moving on. This is not my problem. And so now we have reinforced to this amazing individual that no one's going to help her and she's got to deal with it on her own. And that's what leads to burnout and disillusionment with the entire thing and leaving the medical system altogether, because she's going to find somewhere that's going to treat her better and that's going to support her needs that we can't.
Yeah, in my upcoming book, and so we both have books coming out soon. I talk about the 4 C's of leadership. One of them is about competence, which is kind of a baseline, but the others are courage, character, and compassion. Without those, someone should not be a leader. And being courageous, showing up and speaking up with character and compassion is scary. It is uncomfortable. It is not easy. Leadership is tested in the hard times. Leadership is easy in the good times. So I just felt compelled to share that
And
with the example
I
you
think
gave.
for you, I mean, courage, I think we can't downplay that, right? Because I have had a lot of non-courageous leaders before, right? And I have been told by different men that I could never lead a health system. Why is that? Because I take a stance on things. Because I say, yes, we should work on healthcare disparities. Yes, we should have gender equity in the medical schools and the healthcare systems. And I literally was told by individuals who are on a national level that people are not going to want people like me to lead a healthcare system because I have opinions and have them out there. And there is an individual who's an amazing CEO of a health system who actually has taken a stand on even like guns and gun violence and everything else. And I thought there's an individual who I will role model because he's chosen to pick people over power. He's chosen to come out with his beliefs. He's chosen not to minimize the things that are going on in this country to see if he can, financially gain from it. And so courage is a critical component that I think that the vast majority of people in leadership probably are lacking altogether, if not probably like a 50% of what they should have. And so if we can take anything from this, you need to be courageous and stand in your authentic self, whatever that may be, so that we can actually move these things forward. Because it's going to take everyone actually being authentic to own up to not only their role in these things, but how we can make changes.
What a beautiful way to end. I think that's perfect. Thank you, Kellie, so much for your time, for your passion, for the work that you do. Everyone can get the info and how to connect with you, the resources that you've shared, how they can become part of this solution, become part of the change in the show notes. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
It was a pleasure. It really was. And good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, Kellie.
You've been listening to Humanizing Leadership with Louise H. Reed, along with today's guest, Dr. Kellie Lease Stecher. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you want to get the word out on how we humanize leadership, please rate the podcast, help me out here, share the word, leave a review, tell your friends that they can subscribe to Humanizing Leadership on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever people like to catch their podcasts. And also, I love to hear from you. Tell me what you thought of the show. Tell me what you want to hear more of. And you can do that through LinkedIn, through connecting with me on that platform, or emailing me at louise@louisehreed.com. Finally, I want to give a shout out to the podcast theme music from Ben Sound. So thank you to you. Also, gratitude to Contact Talk Radio Network and my podcast production team, Cameron Steele and Jay Andrews. Thanks again, my friends. I hope it won't be another several months before you hear from me, but until we do connect again, be brave, be bold, and be happy. Bye, friends.